Hi, and welcome to another edition of Right on Rangers Live, coming at you in the midst of the Dallas Cowboys off season. Little NFL playoffs finally coming to an end tonight after the Bills and after the, of course, Ravens finished their clash. And then you also had earlier today the Eagles and the Rams taking care of business. We are going to go through the playoffs. We're going to go through predictions. Also, going to talk a little Cowboys and the coaching search. See what we can come up with. We got a couple, I think, new candidates in the fold with the Detroit Lions exiting last night against the Washington Commanders. Don't think a lot of people expected that one. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, I'm sure busy today with phone calls and interviews and all of that good stuff. And now the Cowboys, of course, have an opportunity to interview either one of them. Don't know if they will or not. We do know that the Cowboys have interviewed Robert Saleh, New York Jets former head coach, and then, of course, former offensive coordinator and quarterback Kellen Moore. We will see what happens. Kellen Moore, obviously, in the thick of a playoff run with the Philadelphia Eagles, set to play in the NFC Championship game this coming weekend. Kellen Moore has conducted a virtual interview, nothing in person, but a virtual interview at least. So we shall see what ends up unfolding with Kellen Moore. All right, before we get started, y'all know the drill here at Right on Rangers. We cover everything sports, but we put a big emphasis on all the teams we love from the great state of Texas, including the Rangers. Whoa, the Cowboys, and especially the Cowboys, even during the NFL offseason and into the NFL playoffs. Thank you for choosing Right on Rangers for all of your Dallas Cowboys content. We'll take all of your questions. We'll take comments along the way. Appreciate all of y'all tuning in. And let's go ahead and let's get into it. So we have, first of all, Robert Saleh being interviewed by the Cowboys earlier this week before all the playoff games took off. I think Robert Saleh absolutely would be a quality hire for the Cowboys. I think New York and just the entire experience, New York Jets, I don't really know if it's fair to judge any player or coach based on that experience in and of itself. I think the Jets have shown over and over throughout the years, really throughout the last couple of decades, ever since I can remember. I know the Jets had a couple of runs in the early 2000s, but nevertheless, you have Robert Saleh, a very quality, extremely high quality defensive coach with the San Francisco 49ers. Then you have him going to the Jets. Never really had the quarterback. I know Aaron Rodgers obviously comes to New York at the end of his tenure and then gets injured. Don't really think Saleh ever got an extremely fair shake there. Zach Wilson as your franchise quarterback. I don't think a lot of people are going to have a lot of success with Zach Wilson as your franchise quarterback. So I don't think that I hold the Jets years against Robert Saleh. I probably look more at the San Francisco 49ers years coaching defense there. And I do absolutely think that it would be a quality hire. I think you've got an upgrade at the quarterback position. As much as we like to go back and forth on Dak, I think Dak is an upgrade over Zach Wilson. And then, of course, when Aaron Rodgers goes injured, they had a nice little carousel of quarterbacks, of backup quarterbacks. I don't really think Robert Saleh got a fair shake there. If he were to become the Cowboys head coach, I really don't know why anyone would hate the move. I don't think, again, you can judge Robert Saleh just based on his time as a New York Jets head coach. It's kind of a mess there anyways. The franchise hasn't done anything special since probably the Rex Ryan, Mark Sanchez years. And that is odd to say in and of itself, is it not? So we've got Robert Saleh interviewing, and then, of course, Kellen Moore. We've talked about Kellen Moore on the show before. A little bit leery of the Kellen Moore hire if they decide to go that route. I know there's some familiarity there. I know that Dak and Kellen have a pretty good relationship connection. But nonetheless, I would really like to see somebody new from outside the organization come in. I know Aaron Glenn, for example, played with the Cowboys. I'm more so talking about coaching. In the past, however many years, I would rather not go back to Kellen Moore at this point. Want somebody new, want somebody that's not going to be a yes man. I know that Des Bryant, Micah Parsons were kind of going back and forth. I don't know if y'all saw that, by the way. I think it was on X, and Des was using that kind of language as well. The yes men that get hired, Cowboys coaches, I think Mike McCarthy was a little bit of that profile. And then you also had Jason Garrett, who I think was definitely, absolutely that profile. I do worry you bring Kellen Moore back into the fold. Is Kellen really going to be using his voice the way that he should be able to as a head coach, having been brought up as a player, as a coordinator in that system? I don't know. I have my doubts about that. I think a Robert Saleh, I think a Ben Johnson, I think even an Aaron Glenn would be a lot better served and would be a lot more able to have some say and impose their will, if you will, on the coaching around, and then also the player personnel decisions. I think that that would definitely be my preference. I know Kellen Moore right now, one of the favorites in Vegas to get this coaching job. Time will tell. Of course, Dion still a really big name, and reports coming out that Dion is going to be making definitely a strong think on whether or not to take this job. I definitely feel like Dion would be the splashiest, would be the showiest. It would absolutely get the most eyes to the situation. Not that there's not already tons of eyes on the Dallas Cowboys and what they're going to do with their next head coach. But I think that it would be great theater for Dion, and I don't think that it would be a terrible coaching decision in and of itself. Personally, I think it's probably either going to be Dion or Kellen Moore. Maybe there's a dark horse in there somewhere, but that would be my best guess at this point. I'd probably prefer Deion Sanders over Kellen Moore. Maybe, just maybe, Aaron Glenn is kind of an outsider. I know that there was a report that came out. I don't know if it was Jordan Schultz. I forget who it was. One of the big time NFL beat writers that essentially linked Aaron Glenn to the Cowboys, brought up the fact that Aaron Glenn from Texas, played for Texas A&M, played for the Cowboys in the Bill Parcells days. He could be an outside shot to get the position. So my guess would be one of those three. You know, maybe Aaron Glenn is the distant dark horse. Then you've got Dion, and then after that, you've got Kellen Moore. That's what I would have to go with in this whole equation. And if I had to pick from one of the three, I would probably go with Deion Sanders. Robert Saleh would be interesting. I absolutely think that he would do a nice job with the defense, and I think that there would be enough pieces in play around him that he would be able to have success offensively as well. But I do like the defensive strength that Saleh brings. I think that Zimmer didn't really get a fair shake either in Dallas with all the injuries, but I absolutely feel like Robert Saleh would have this defense playing at a high level. You look around the NFC East, you've got a couple of different things that I noticed. First of all, Philadelphia with the number one defense in the league, and it's not a shock, not a surprise that they're having success with that. Look, Washington defense not on the same level as Philly, but you've got a defensive-minded coach, Dan Quinn, and you've got some pieces on the defensive side of the football in Washington as well. So I do think that Robert Saleh, the defensive mind, it would definitely be on par with what a lot of the other NFC East teams at this point are working their way towards, especially the Commanders and the Eagles. Look, the Giants kind of out on an island by themselves. I mean, just being real. But you see the Eagles investing a lot in the defense. You see the Commanders going out, getting a defensive-minded coach. Clearly, Jaden Daniels is behind a lot of the success there, along with Cliff Kingsbury. And I don't think that you cannot give Dan Quinn any credit either. But I still think it's an interesting trend. You've got Dan Quinn hired defensive coach for the Commanders. And then you've got investment from the Eagles into their defense. Number one defense in the league. It's impressive. And I do think the Cowboys would be wise to duplicate it to an extent. I don't think that Robert Saleh is going to be the head coach because of that. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I think it might be interesting if you brought Robert Saleh in as a defensive coordinator. I don't know if that's where his mindset is at. I think that there would probably be another team willing to give him an opportunity at head coach, maybe not. But if he's not able to get a head coaching job and the Cowboys decide to hire somebody else, I would absolutely love that hire. It would be phenomenal. I think that Robert Saleh would do an incredible job as a defensive coordinator. I don't know at this point who the odds-on favorite is. I think Kellen Moore had taken that over. I know Dion was, at least initially when all the reports came out, up at the very top. I don't know. Robert Saleh, Deion Sanders, maybe Aaron Glenn gets a call. I think Ben Johnson's probably going to the Raiders. From all the reports that I've heard, seems like the Raiders kind of a foregone conclusion. Maybe not. But you've also, of course, got a couple of other coaches that are still in the mix that are still playing right now or still coaching right now in the NFC or AFC championship games. We'll see what happens. Let me check some comments, though. Appreciate all y'all. Let's see here. John, what's good, man? Thanks for tuning in. What a revolting result of these football games, John says. Who are you rooting for in the game next Sunday, Philly or Washington? Look, I cannot bring myself, absolutely cannot bring myself to root for the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't do it. I just can't. I actually found myself ready for anything, any emotions in that game last night with Washington and Detroit. I went into it fully expecting that I would want Detroit to win. For whatever reason, I can't explain it. I found myself wanting Washington to win. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they've been so pathetic over the past 30 years or 30 plus years. Of course, Washington hadn't been to an NFC championship game since 1991. Cowboys now hold an ugly title of being the last team, I should say, being the only team, one of the only teams that hasn't been to the NFC championship game since like 2010. I think they might be the only one. Washington, of course, now heading to the NFC championship game. For whatever reason, I found myself cheering for Washington. Can't explain it. Don't know why. Dan Quinn, maybe some of the former Cowboys. Armstrong was having himself a day on the defensive line. Biotic and all those guys. A lot of former Cowboys on Washington. I don't know if it was the former Cowboy thing. I just did not find myself cheering for Detroit. Of course, I did go back and forth with some Detroit fans the other day. I think actually last season too, with the game where we had like that controversial 2-point conversion play. I don't know if y'all remember that from last year when Detroit came to Dallas. Really big game. I think it was a primetime game. I went back and forth with Lions fans a bunch. Look, no hate. Look, Philadelphia and really the NFC East teams are only teams that I really truly dislike. For whatever reason, though, Jaden Daniels, Washington, found myself cheering for him, and they're definitely going to be the team that I cheer for in the NFC championship game. I think that it was one of those games where I kind of wish that both teams could lose, if I'm totally being honest. But I do think, give me the lesser of two evils, and for me, that's Washington. Definitely do not want the Eagles winning that ball game. No need for them to get to another Super Bowl, have another chance to creep closer to the Cowboys. I'm just not here for it. I'm not. So I absolutely am going to be going Commanders this coming Sunday. And I hope that they make it to the Super Bowl and it's a great game. I don't know how I'm going to feel with the Commanders in the Super Bowl. If it's the Chiefs, I might have to cheer Commanders. I don't know if I want to see Chiefs do a three-peat. It's very conflicting here. I really don't know if there's an easy answer with this, y'all, as a Cowboys fan. A part of me would definitely want to see the Chiefs get dethroned if they make it all the way to the Super Bowl again, one game away, of course. If the Bills can get past the Chiefs, I think the Bills would be a pretty easy cheer for me. I don't think that I would be cheering for the Commanders over the Bills. I'd like to see the Bills win a Super Bowl. If you're going to give me the available options out of the 4 teams, probably would want the Bills to win it the most. So if the Bills can somehow upset the Chiefs at Arrowhead this coming weekend, Bills the rest of the way. Though this weekend with Commanders, Eagles, if you're a Cowboys fan, I really don't think it gets any more clear than cheering for Washington. I think if you had to put the two side by side, yes, of course, Washington is a rival, but let's be real. They have not been a competitive rival for a long, long time. They had some runs in there with some decent teams. I think they made it to the playoffs one year with Taylor Heineke, Kirk Cousins. They made it a couple of years there, but never really had sustained success, did the Washington Commanders. So I think comparatively, the Commanders got to be the team we cheer for. Cowboys Nation, let's get behind them. Former coach, former defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. That's what I'm sticking with. And then, honestly, go Commanders if it's against the Chiefs. If the Bills can make it, though, Bills all the way. That would be my ideal, is Bills win the whole thing. I don't want to see the Chiefs repeat. No, thank you. Me keep going here. Charlie, what's good, man? Yeah, I'm excited for the game tomorrow. It should be a great time. I'll probably go live after the game, do my Longhorns off-season pod, and then I'll also talk about the national championship as well, of course. So for all of y'all hanging out, every week I'll do a Dallas Cowboys pod, off-season stuff. We'll definitely talk through any results. So like next week after the NFC, AFC championship games, we'll talk about the results. We'll go through all that, and I'm going to do that later on this show. We've already kind of gotten into it a little bit, but I'll do the same thing for the Super Bowl and for the week leading up to the Super Bowl. And then also for the Longhorns, we'll do, like I said, tomorrow night after the Natty, but then we'll probably pick a day every week to do a Longhorns off-season pod too. So we will definitely continue on with football, even though from February till August, no games, but there's going to be plenty to talk about, I have a feeling, especially with the Cowboys looking for a new head coach, free agency beginning, trades, all that good stuff. All that good stuff. So that's coming up soon. Thank you so much, by the way, for everybody that's tuning in today. Appreciate the comments. Going to try and get to all of them. Got a few other things that I want to get to, but I want to make sure that we get to all these as well. Same fishing, what's good? Let's go Commanders. Yeah, I don't think that there's really any other way. There's no other way, Cowboys fans, right now. We got to go Commanders against the Eagles. I don't know. Maybe some of the old school Cowboys fans really, really feel like the Commanders are a bigger rivalry. I don't know. I can't see it. I think the Eagles, just the hatred between the two fan bases and teams, I got to go Washington. Got to go Washington. Absolutely. Thoughts on bringing Kellen Moore back? Here's the positive. Here's the glass half full with Kellen Moore. I think that you like the fact that he's coached for the Eagles and you've maybe got a little bit of insider info there. So I do think that is the angle with Kellen Moore. You bring Kellen Moore in, not like he's going to be able to give you the key to beating Philly every single time, but you bring Kellen Moore in and you're naturally going to have all of that insider knowledge about the Philadelphia Eagles and their organization. Clearly, the Eagles would be making some changes. You know that they're going to mix some things up if Kellen Moore were to leave and go coach for the arch rival. But I do like the fact that Kellen Moore has coached with the Eagles, knows the tendencies, knows how things work around there. I think that that is the silver lining with the Kellen Moore type. Don't love the Kellen Moore hiring from the perspective of having a new perspective, having a guy that is going to push Jerry Jones a little bit. I think it's going to be tough for Kellen as a head coach. I'm not saying he's going to be disrespected, but I do wonder if it's going to be easy for the Jones family to kind of walk all over him. He's a guy that came up as a player. Yes, he was an offensive coordinator, and the Dallas Cowboys had a lot of success with Kellen Moore running the offense. But I just wonder, is Kellen going to be able to have as much influence coming from the positions that he's held for the Cowboys versus an outsider, versus a Robert Saleh, versus a Deion Sanders even. I know Deion's played for the organization. I still think it's different. You go and you will go somewhere else and you have the coaching success. I do think that matters. So hiring Kellen Moore, positive. You get that insider information about the Eagles. You also have a guy that's familiar with the players, with Dak especially. Negative, you don't have that fresh perspective, that fresh set of eyes, and you have a guy that potentially is going to be a bit of a yes man to Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. Keep going. Let's see here. I'm just going to be an unbiased broadcaster. I don't care for either team. Buffalo needs the chip. Appreciate the comment, by the way. Thank you so much. Look, I'm going Buffalo all the way. I want to see them knock off the Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs, the three-peat, it would be historic. Look, it would be, I don't know if it'd be fun to say that you witnessed it, but I think it would be one of those things you look back on. Yep, I remember the three-peat, the first three-peat in NFL history. Like, from that perspective, seeing something that's never been done before, I can appreciate it. I don't want to see it happen. There's a very good chance I think it does happen. I think the Chiefs are a good football team. And you know what? They put themselves in positions to win games. I know a lot of people are saying lucky, the refs, all that stuff. I think the Chiefs are a good team. The Texans, I think, played them really well, but you're not going to win games at Arrowhead against the two-time defending Super Bowl champions making any kind of mistakes. You have to essentially, in my opinion, play a close to error-free game, and the Texans just didn't do that. Can the Bills go in and do that? I think they have a pretty good shot. I do think, as I was thinking about this game between the Ravens and the Bills, I felt like it could go either way. Like, I felt like the Bills or the Ravens could have won this game. That being said, I definitely feel like the Bills have a better chance to beat the Chiefs than the Ravens did. I know we saw Ravens-Chiefs last year. We saw how that went on the road in Baltimore, by the way. Just felt like going into this matchup tonight, like the Bills had a better shot, and I'm glad that the Bills end up advancing. Gut punch for Ravens, man. That Mark Andrews especially, I know he's going to get a lot of the blame. Look, Lamar Jackson, as good as he was in the second half, the 2 turnovers in the first half were killer. I think he's got to take a little bit of the blame. He owned up to it in the press conference. But Mark Andrews, that hurts. I mean, one of your most reliable, most storied members of your franchise, and you got a key fumble in the fourth quarter, and you've got an extremely pivotal drop on that 2-point conversion. Feel for the guy. But, of course, the Ravens could have been better in other areas. Doesn't all come down to Mark Andrews in the catch, but that is the difference in the game, whether we like it or not. We keep going. Let's go here. Appreciate the comment. Washington-Dallas rivalry ended in the early 1990s. Look, 1991, right, was the last time Washington won it all. I can't say that I've ever really felt the same amount of passion, hatred, anger towards the Washington franchise as I do towards the Eagles franchise. It's not really particularly close to me. I think Dan Quinn going over there has made me like a little soft towards Washington. I'm not going to lie. And just some of the former Cowboys players that Dan Quinn took with him as well. But the Eagles in comparison, really there's no comparison. Eagles, I want to see lose every single week. Washington, for whatever reason, I just did not feel myself this season having that same sentiment. Sure, I didn't mind if they lost. In fact, we were cheering, Cowboys Nation, we were cheering for the Eagles to beat Washington when we still had an outside prayer to make the playoffs. I think that was like week 14 or 15. Jaden Daniels leads the epic comeback against the Eagles. You know what? It was probably going to be a long shot. The Cowboys did anything special this year anyways. I eventually kind of said to myself, you know what? The Eagles lost. Whatever. Like, I could find a positive in it. But I'll say this. Yeah, the Washington and Dallas rivalry has never felt as strong to me as the Philly one. Let's see. We need Aaron Glenn. Kellen will be a puppet. I do kind of feel that way. The only positive, like I've already said about Kellen, is I do think You get Kellen Moore in there. You've got some insider info with Philadelphia, some familiarity with guys on the roster, Dak especially. But I do fear that there's going to be a little bit too much puppeteering going on from the Jones family with the Kellen Moore type. Just my gut. Maybe we're all totally wrong on that. But I think Aaron Glenn, Dion, Robert Saleh would be better choices. I would much rather personally have one of those guys than Kellen. If it's Kellen, I'll get on board with it. I'm not going to sit on here and just trash the move when that announcement does come across my phone. But right now, I definitely would prefer to have one of those other guys. We keep going. Let's go. I skipped over the message. I was showing you love as another fellow Cowboy. It's all right. I see the love ain't shown back. All right. Have a good one, bro. I don't even know what's going on. Yeah, sorry, man. Didn't mean anything by it. So if you're still hanging out, my apologies. Tough to go live. Tough to go through all the comments. So if I misinterpreted something, yeah, my bad. No harm meant at all. Any coach other than Dion will only be a lapdog for Jerry. Continue the 30 years of being irrelevant in the playoffs. Yeah, I feel that way. Also, I do think maybe Robert Saleh would be somewhat less of that than Kellen Moore or somebody else. I definitely feel like you got Kellen Moore in there. You've got somebody else in there from maybe the organization. I don't know. One of my buddies sent me something like maybe Brian Schottenheimer is a candidate. I haven't heard anything like that. The point is somebody in-house, just not a big fan of that. I'd like to see somebody new. So I do agree with that. Absolutely. Keep going here. Let's see. We are coming to clip Eagles wings. We'll see you next. We'll see you Cowboys next year too. Hey, look, I think that the Commanders-Cowboys rivalry could be something one day. I think maybe next year could be the year. I mean, look, we went 1-1 this year. I don't think anybody expected the Cowboys to grab a win against the Commanders like they did. That was an epic game, by the way. Crazy game. But I think that this does have the makings of being a good NFC East rivalry over the next 5-10 years, as long as Jaden Daniels is there. So it could be something that's coming back. We talked about how the rivalry early 90s was pretty hot, kind of died out there for about 25 years. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right, we keep going. Do I believe the Chiefs got special treatment from the refs versus Houston yesterday? I mean, look, it's hard to say no. I think the hits on Mahomes, the two in particular that come to my mind, the second one, I don't think was as big of a deal as the first one, which I think was on one of the later downs, would have resulted in a punt otherwise. I do think going into Arrowhead, and I said this earlier, you've basically got to play perfect football. First of all, the Chiefs are a good team. You know that the refs are giving Mahomes a little bit of special treatment, are giving the Chiefs in general a little bit of special treatment. So you've got to play essentially perfect football. And the Texans didn't do that. You leave, 4 points on the board? Your kicker missing an extra point, missing a field goal. I know the field goal was not a chip shot, but you had to be perfect going into it. You weren't, and they paid the price. Didn't get the win. I think that the Texans actually, at one point in the second half, you looked at the box score and even just the feel of the game. I think the Texans at one point felt like the better team. Like if you just took away the score, right? You don't have the score. You just were watching. The Texans looked like a great football team in comparison to the Chiefs, who I thought were kind of scuffling. I mean, they kind of hit their stride in the fourth quarter there, of course, but I thought the Texans were the better looking team in the game. And I think the numbers would back that up. They were dominating time of possession, yards, everything. But you falter down in the red zone. You have to settle for field goals. You miss them. All those things matter. Chiefs punching it in when it does matter. And yes, the benefactors of calls that are very, very close and questionable late. You come to expect it with the Chiefs. And all I can say for the Bills, Don't leave it up to that late. Have a lead. Do not leave it up to the refs and Mahomes making a drive at the end. You've got to put the Chiefs away. You've got to put them away late. The execution has to be there. If it's a tie game in the fourth quarter and the Chiefs have the ball, it feels done to me. I know that these two teams went back and forth like crazy a few years ago in 2021, that epic game where Mahomes engineers the field goal drive with 13 seconds left. I hope that game on Sunday between Bills and Chiefs is as good as it was 3 years ago. It was classic, instant classic. Yeah, but if you leave it up to the last quarter, tie game, you know that the refs are giving Mahomes and the Chiefs a little bit of preferential treatment. We all know that. It's not going to go well for you. It's not going to work out. And that is how I feel with the Texans. Was cheering for them. Wanted to see the Texans win that ball game. Thought they had a chance to do it for whatever reason. And I don't even know in order to understand why some of those calls, some of those especially roughing calls that got flagged, I don't get why it continues with so much scrutiny on it. But it is what it is. Again, don't leave it up to chance late. That's what I say. Keep going here. Appreciate all y'all. We have got a number of different things that we can touch on heading into next week, the NFC AFC championship games. We talked a little bit about the Commanders game last night, Commanders Lions. I do think that was a case of you had a team that was coming in high off of a win against Tampa Bay. You had a Lions team that had a huge emotional win against Minnesota to capture the number 1 seed. Then you have a bye. Maybe there's a little bit of rust there. Maybe there's a little bit of an emotional letdown. But Jaden Daniels, I think you can just say, is just otherworldly at this point. So you had definitely a Lions offense that turned it over way too much. Then Goff had 3 different turnovers. Can't do that. They still scored 30-something points. I mean, look, the defense, I definitely think Detroit, their defense, you can rail on them. I know they were missing some starters. I think it ultimately comes down to Jaden Daniels just being really, really special. I don't know how much we want to focus on the intangibles, the emotional letdown after the Vikings game, the couple of weeks that they had off. Who knows how that really affected them? But I will say this, I think you're just running into a quarterback that is on a totally different level than everybody else right now. So that was the Detroit-Washington game. Then you also had a couple of other games as well. You had that Texans-Chiefs game. We talked that through. Chiefs definitely have not looked as dominant as they have in past years, going back to the 2020, early or late 2010s, where they were just a juggernaut offensively. They just kind of grind out games a lot more now. If you are within 3 or if they have any kind of lead in the fourth quarter, don't feel great, especially at Arrowhead, and you know that they're getting a little bit of preferential treatment. Got to put the Chiefs away early if you want to beat them. I think that's what the Bills are going to have to do today. Next week. Now, for today's games, Eagles, Rams, kind of curious what that game would have been like in normal conditions. I don't know if it would have made a difference or not. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference at all. Maybe it still works out exactly the same, whether it's in snowy, cold, windy conditions, or if it's at home in LA. I do think LA, really, really good football team. I thought that they were going to win at the end. The turnovers, you had the fumble on the handoff. They got that one back. Then Williams fumbles late, didn't get 2 hands on the football going into contact. I really feel like that game gets played on a normal conditions, normal playing surface. It's probably a much different football game. Maybe Eagles fans would say the same thing. The offense would have been a lot better, and the game would have gone a lot differently for the Eagles as well. I'm just curious, what would that game have been like in a dome in normal conditions. Maybe Eagles still win it. I think Saquon would have probably had his way with that Rams defense. They're missing Aaron Donald, man. Aaron Donald on this Rams team, that'd be crazy. I really feel like if they had Aaron Donald today, they'd probably be playing in an NFC championship game. Aaron Donald, of course, retiring. Last year, a couple of years ago? Definitely thought when they got down to the 15-yard line, the Rams did at the end of the game, thought that they would pull it off. Looked like Stafford was dealing. And then the Rams offensive line just took a complete dump. I mean, those last two plays, just a complete dump. Totally soiled the bed, and Matt Stafford has no time. I thought Staff looked really good after maybe a little bit of a shaky start. It's hard to totally judge somebody's performance when you're playing in the wintry conditions, but I thought Stafford played really, really well. Look, Jalen Hurts, the fact that he has what he's got going right now with the interceptions, I don't know when the last time he's thrown one is. You got to give credit. Like the Philly offense took advantage of the mistakes that the Rams made. They were good enough, just good enough to win today. That defense is totally legit. I could try to be objective. I can't totally be. Y'all see clearly who I'm representing on my shirt right now and on my hat. But look, I can't lie. The Eagles are a good football team. I don't know what's going to happen in the NFC Championship game. I hope, just for the sake of it being a little bit more fair, even across the board, I just hope that the conditions there aren't what it is this week or what it was this week. I know that everybody loves watching a wintry game, but I'd much rather watch a game where the offenses, the defenses aren't having to work against the conditions. That's just me, my preference. And you know what? Each team has to deal with it. So it can't be a total excuse, but clearly I think that those kinds of conditions favor the team that's used to them. You've got a team coming from LA, coming from the West Coast. They don't know how to deal with that ever. They play in a dome. And then you've got the Eagles used to playing outdoors, used to playing in those conditions. I do think that it's an advantage, and that's why it matters in the regular season to get the home field advantage and be able to play your games at home. So we'll see what happens next week. I think that the Commanders are really, really red hot right now. Jaden Daniels especially. I think that you could have made an argument after the Tampa Bay win. Maybe there would have been some kind of letdown against Detroit. I think the exact opposite happened. So I'm not worried about any kind of letdown. I think that they're pretty locked in. I think Jaden Daniels is on a heater. I would be really, really surprised if Washington comes out looking sluggish. I think that they'll be ready to go in that game. And I would take Washington and the points in that one. I think it's 4.5. 4 or 5, something like that. I'd probably take Washington and the points. Keep going here. Appreciate all the comments. Thank you so much. We go, let's see. CeeDee Lamb, Washington has $100 million in salary cap space. Yeah, I don't think Lamb is going to be going to Washington. I could be wrong. I don't think CeeDee is going to Washington anytime soon, but dream on, I suppose. CeeDee's locked up in Dallas for at least a few more years, I believe. A couple more for sure. Yeah, I think that is a wish, no doubt. But on to the games from today. We already talked about Rams and we talked about Eagles. Bills, Ravens, Lamar, the 2 first-half turnovers were killers. You had the 21-10 halftime lead. Lamar looked great in the second half, I thought. I know Mark Andrews with the fumble and then the drop, going to get a lot of crap, but I absolutely think you got to go back to that first half. You don't have the turnovers. You don't have the sluggish start in the first. Maybe you feed Derrick Henry a little bit more. I think it's a different game, but the Bills, really good football team. I don't think by any means like they didn't deserve to win. Who knows? They probably go down and kick a field goal after Lamar and Mark Andrews link up to tie it there had Andrews not dropped it. How much time was left, by the way? I don't know if I thought that there was like still a little bit of time left on the clock when that touchdown was converted. I'll get the exact number, but I think Josh Allen, very likely that he goes down and probably gets the team in position to kick a field goal. It's not a sure shot. Definitely not a sure shot. But it looks like when they scored it, there was 1:33 left in the game. Yeah, that's an eternity. I mean, even if Mark Andrews catches that for the 2-point conversion, I don't think that it is a foregone conclusion that game's going to overtime. If anything, I'm probably betting on Josh Allen with 1:30 to get the team into field goal range. So I know that Mark Andrews is going to get a lot of flack for what he did today in the fourth quarter. But the reality is, I don't think they probably end up winning the game anyways. I think Josh Allen and Cook and Kincaid and all those guys probably get the team in field goal range, and they probably end up winning it 30-27. So I'm not convinced that Mark Andrews is the reason why the Ravens lost. They probably go on to lose anyways. If I was betting on it, that's what I would have bet on. But clearly, it's going to be a big focal point. And so the lines for next week. So I think 4.5 was the number that I saw for the Eagles and Commanders game. So I'm going to fast forward to the conference championship week here. Looks like, oh man, ESPN, what are you guys doing? Okay, looks like it is -5.5 right now. So the numbers jumped up a little bit. So that means there's some people betting Eagles right now. -5.5. Philly favored. Over under is at 47.5 for that one. Again, I'm probably taking Washington and the points in that one +5.5. Or I think if you're feeling really bold, you bet them outright. I think that is where all the value is. I think Philadelphia is a great team. I think you could easily see this game, though, being a 3 or 4 point game, being close. Even if Philly leads it by double digits late, then you get the backdoor touchdown. Philly's up 10 late. Jaden Daniels punches in a meaningless touchdown with a minute left. I think 5.5 is a tough number in a game like this where you expect it to be pretty close. I would have to go Washington and the points +5.5. And like I said, if you're feeling bold, you like the run that Jaden Daniels is on, +200 on the money line, so 2-1 odds. Think that is definitely something worth looking at. Now we go to the game in the AFC, and I believe that the Chiefs are very slight favorites. Looks like -1.5 is the line. Chiefs are favored by 1.5, and the over-under is also set at 48.5 as well. Buffalo +105 on the money line. KC -125 on the money line. So two really pretty close games. 5.5, obviously a little bit of a larger line than the 1.5, but I expect both of these games are going to be pretty close. I would be really, really surprised if there was a blowout in either the AFC or the NFC. It would shock me. I think both these games are going to be pretty highly contested, close affairs. If it's me, I don't think with the line being what it is, KC -1.5, -125. I just don't see how you take Buffalo in this game. You've got the Chiefs at home. You know that they're going to get a little bit of the preferential treatment. I would love to see Buffalo with the upset. I just don't think there's a lot of value in betting Buffalo. If you were getting like 3 or 4, absolutely. This is basically a pick 'em game. So with that being said, I just don't know how you can bet against the Chiefs at home. Sure, maybe Josh Allen pulls off something miraculous, but I just think in terms of at the onset, looking at the value behind each bet, taking Buffalo, taking KC, I feel like KC is definitely the choice here at home, knowing in close games at home with the officiating, you're going to get a little bit of favoritism towards the Chiefs. You just are. It's the way it is. Sean says Chiefs always beat the Bills when it matters. Look, I don't think that you can totally discount the 2021 game. Josh Allen had the Chiefs beat. I mean, he did. 13 seconds left. Josh Allen had him beat. And then the Bills defense and the defensive coordinator really totally melted down. You let Patrick Mahomes carve you up for 30 yards in 13 seconds or whatever it was. Look, I absolutely think that the Chiefs stand a really good chance at winning. I do think Josh Allen and the Bills have the potential to get it done. But again, if I'm just going off of the spread, -1.5, KC at home, really hard for me to take Buffalo in that spot from a betting perspective. But totally from the heart, cheering for the Bills. Hope they can pull it off. Really, really hope they can pull it off. All right, y'all. Hey, let me check out. I don't know if I've still got anybody on Instagram. I know I got a few comments. What's good, bud? Thanks for tuning in. Buffalo versus Commanders Super Bowl. I would love to see that. Saleh going to be the Niners D coordinator next year. Watch. We'll see if that ends up happening, man. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. I do think that Dion is probably going to be the guy. I do agree. I do think, Sean, thanks for the comments, man. I do think that McDermott and the defense totally blew that game. I think that you would have been much more wise with a different coverage altogether. You gave Pat Mahomes and Kelsey the middle of the field. It just was a very, very mind-boggling setup there with the 13 seconds left. Almost felt like the Bills just thought the game was over. And Pat Mahomes is able to get the Chiefs into field goal range and then win it in overtime. So I think that Josh Allen definitely knows that he can get it done there. I don't think there's some kind of mental block. I think that Josh Allen is going to go in and is going to have a good football game. He's going to be tough to stop. But I think that the Chiefs at home, if the game is any type of close late, I am not going to be shocked in the slightest if something ends up going the Chiefs' way. It's just kind of how it always goes, honestly. So, with that being said, I'm predicting my predictions beyond just my heart. I'm going to go Commanders Chiefs Super Bowl. Commanders Chiefs Super Bowl. I would love for it to be Commanders and Bills. I'm going to go Commanders Chiefs Super Bowl, and I'm going to say that the Chiefs probably end up winning that one. As good as Jaden Daniels has been, Super Bowl, big moment. You've got all the experience. The Chiefs have been there. Dan Quinn, I do think, is a great coach, but Andy Reid, best coach left at this point. So I'm going to go Chiefs Commanders Super Bowl with the Chiefs taking the dub in that one. You let me know who you got in the Super Bowl and for the winner. I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on that one. We'll be back next week after the NFC and AFC championship games are through. We'll do Cowboys offseason talk as well. But then at that point, we'll also go through the games. We'll talk it all through and give you my feedback, give you my analysis on both of those. We'll keep going with comments, and then we're going to wrap things up. Francisco, what's good? Sorry, buddy. Sorry to burst your bubble. Is that the expression? Pass your bubbles. I've never heard that. Burst your bubble, I've heard. Not pass. But is it going to be Eagles, Bills? Okay. Maybe Eagles, Bills. That would actually be pretty good. I wouldn't mind seeing Eagles, Bills. Eagles losing, of course, in that one. Look, I would love to be wrong on the Bills, but I just feel like Pat Mahomes, Kansas City, Andy Reid, I just feel like they're all a little bit too good and too much to handle. I'll be cheering for the Bills. I'm going Commanders Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and then the Chiefs taking it. Rookie quarterback kind of feels like a little bit with Jalen Hurts when the Eagles made it a couple of years ago. You got all the way there. You had a hot quarterback, but then you run into a buzzsaw, a guy in Patrick Mahomes who's been there before. Travis Kelce, same thing. Andy Reid, same thing. That definitely would be a fun Super Bowl, though. Bills, Eagles, I would enjoy watching. Commanders, Chiefs would be a lot of fun, too. Really, any matchup, I think, would be a good one. Eagles, Chiefs rematch would be great. I would be 100% cheering for the three-peat if that was the case. No doubt. Without a doubt. I would be cheering for the three-peat if the Eagles end up making it. I mean, look, as much as I don't want to see the three-peat happen, I would absolutely be cheering for it if the Eagles were playing in the Super Bowl. McDermott almost blew tonight's game. Sean says 3rd and goal from the 2. They choose to run it out of the gun. Yeah, look, tush push down there, 3rd and goal from the 2 made a lot of sense to me. I mean, Josh Allen, dude, just basically has to fall down and it feels like you're getting a yard, right? I mean, definitely, I think in 2 tries, 2 tush pushes with Allen, I feel like it gets done. Probably didn't need to be that close, but Bills end up getting the win. I still say, even with an Andrews catch in the corner there with that 2-point conversion, Bills probably take it down and kick a field goal. But I know McDermott has definitely been the subject of scrutiny. You know, we'll see if he's not able to get to a Super Bowl again, though. Maybe you just keep rolling out with McDermott, but I got to wonder, maybe they'll be thinking about, is this guy able to get over the hump? Or are they just going to be satisfied? You know what? McDermott gets us to the divisional round and the conference championship most years. We're good with that. Right? It's not easy to make it to a Super Bowl. It's not. You got to give credit. You got to give props when a team does. It's not fluky. Yes, sometimes there are easier paths to a Super Bowl than others. The Eagles' path to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, for me, one of the easier ones I've seen in recent memory. I may be a little biased, but I think regardless, you make it to a Super Bowl, it's impressive. Even if it is the Eagles, it's impressive. So we'll see. McDermott, if he ends up losing again, maybe you just chalk it up to Pat Mahomes' Arrowhead. It was too much, and they just keep on running it back. I kind of wonder, though, if maybe they're asking themselves, can this guy just not get over the hump? I don't know. It could be an interesting offseason in Buffalo if they flame out against the Chiefs once again. Keep going. As a Commanders fan, we're not supposed to be here. This was supposed to be a rebuild year. Totally agree. I don't think anybody expected the Commanders to be in the playoffs, let alone be in the NFC Championship game. Like, what were the odds on that? That's what I want to know. I find myself cheering for Washington. I think I would cheer for them probably over the Chiefs. I'm definitely cheering for them over the Eagles this coming Sunday. If the Bills make it, I'll probably go Bills over Commanders. Look, big Dan Quinn fan. I wish the Cowboys would have hired Dan Quinn, honestly. Like, how stupid is Jerry Jones looking at this point? You could have dumped Mike McCarthy and you could have hired Dan Quinn right then and there. Why you didn't, why you weren't willing to think a little bit outside the box, get a little controversial. Because look, firing McCarthy to hire Quinn, that would have probably taken a little bit of smoothing over here and there in the locker room. I would have to guess, as much as I've heard Dan Quinn was very well liked by most players on the Dallas Cowboys, I definitely feel like that would have been a little awkward. Might have been hard to navigate, but absolutely would have been a quality move. Let Mike walk after the Green Bay debacle last year in the playoffs, fire, and then hire Dan Quinn, knowing that he could have probably gone the offseason before, decided to stick around. Not that it was because he thought maybe he could be the coach one day, but you know what? For his own personal reasons, decided to give it another go as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. Probably could have taken a head coaching job somewhere else. I think the move would have been fire Mike McCarthy after the embarrassing playoff game against Green Bay last year, hire Dan Quinn. I don't know how you can't be kicking yourself if you're the Jones family for letting Dan Quinn get away, watching him take this Washington Commanders team all the way to the NFC Championship game, something that the Cowboys haven't been in since the mid-1990s. It's embarrassing. And you've got to think that watching not just one, but 2 NFC East teams this year in the NFC Championship game, that's got to burn. That's got to hurt. But that was the move. Hire Dan Quinn, fire McCarthy after the embarrassing Green Bay playoff game. It's in the past now, can't change it. You can only hope that the Cowboys get the coaching search and the coaching candidate right this year. Time will tell who it ends up being. Will it be Dion? Will it be Kellen Moore? Aaron Glenn? Some other dark horse candidate? Robert Saleh? He interviewed. We'll see what happens. I am very curious what they're going to end up deciding. If I had to bet on it, I'm probably going Dion. It's the move that is going to get the most eyeballs on the Dallas Cowboys organization. If I was Jerry, I'd hire Dion and I'd announce it right before the NFC Championship game, just to be petty. Hire Dion, announce it right before the Eagles and Commanders start playing. Just be petty with it. That is a total Jerry Jones thing to do, and I would be absolutely here for it. That would give me a laugh. I don't know if Dion is the best guy to turn things around in Dallas and get them back to the NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl, but I absolutely would love it from a theater perspective. And I think that Dion actually would be good in the locker room and good on the sidelines for the Cowboys. I think he'd give Jerry Jones a little bit of pushback. I think he'd be respected by the players. I think he's shown that he can have success coaching at a high level. Jackson State, Colorado. I definitely feel like Dion is a quality coach, but absolutely, you know that with Dion, you are getting a lot of cameras, a lot of clicks, a lot of attention. And that is what Jerry Jones likes and what Jerry Jones aims for when it comes to running the Cowboys. Hire Dion, announce it right before the Commanders and Eagles kickoff. That's what I'd love to see. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to wrap things up for tonight. We will be back tomorrow night, actually, after the national championship game. I'm getting that right, huh? Tomorrow is the national championship game. Yes, it is. Okay, I'm getting all thrown off with this long weekend. So I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll do a little Longhorns off-season pod. We'll talk about the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Don't know who I've got in that one. I think I'm probably going to have to go just for the win, Ohio State. I would probably take Notre Dame with the points. I think it's plus 8.5 right now. So I'm going to go Ohio State wins, Notre Dame covers. Let's see how it works out. Get to one more comment here. Dan Quinn had a terrible game plan for Green Bay. Not all McCarthy's fault. Couldn't stop anything Green Bay did. Dak actually played good. I don't know if I would say Dak played well in that game. I think he had a pick six and another turnover. I don't know how 2 or 3 turnovers. I can't say Dak played well in that game. I do agree that the defensive game plan was not solid. I kind of wonder, was Dan Quinn kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out? I don't want to disrespect him by suggesting that, but you do kind of wonder. I mean, these coaches are human. You know that a lot of different teams are going to be seeking out your services. I just think all around it was a bad game. Still would have hired Dan Quinn over Mike McCarthy. I know you can't put everything on McCarthy for what happened in that Green Bay game, but I still think that I probably would have let McCarthy go. Forget the lame duck year. Let McCarthy go. Hire Dan Quinn. Sign him to a multi-year deal. And call it good. But I do agree. Dan Quinn, I don't think, needs to escape blame entirely for that Green Bay debacle last year in the playoffs. I think he definitely deserves some of the blame. And I'm sure he would say that himself. We'll see if he's able to make it back to the Super Bowl. We all know what happened last time Dan Quinn was in a Super Bowl. Man, I'm sure that he is anxious to try and avenge that loss against the Patriots, nearly 10 years ago? Part of me's rooting for him. I'll root for the Bills over the Commanders, but if the Commanders make it in against the Chiefs, I'll probably cheer on the disruption of the three-peat. I got to pick the lesser of two evils. I know that the Washington Commanders getting a Super Bowl is not ideal, being our division rivals, but I just don't love the Chiefs winning 3 in a row. No, thank you. All right, y'all. I'll be back tomorrow. Come hang out, talk national championship. We'll talk some Texas Longhorns off-season as well. Steve Sarkisian signing a pretty big extension. Stark was going to potentially be interviewed by a number of different NFL teams. They keep him around, sign him to a nice deal with some good perks, making him one of the highest paid coaches. We'll get into that contract tomorrow night after we talk the Natty. come hang out. Should be fun. If you know somebody that loves football, loves the NFL, loves the Cowboys, loves college football, please send them my way. Let's keep growing this good group of people we got talking football, talking Cowboys. I love it. It's why I started this. Appreciate everybody that watched tonight, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Thank you for the comments, likes, all that good stuff. Your support does not get taken for granted. Very, very grateful for you. Hope everyone has a great off day tomorrow, Martin Luther King. And if you're working, hope the day goes by quick and hope you can enjoy the national championship tomorrow night. Have a great week ahead. And as I always say to end every show, God bless and go Cowboys.